There are a lot of new weapon choices in Valheim Ashlands, and resources are kind of precious and often hard to come by. So when you do get all that you need to make something cool, what weapon should you make? In this video, I'll be going through all of the new melee weapons in the Valheim Ashlands update and putting them on this tier list. I will be ranking ranged and magic weapons in a separate video. Of course, these are just my opinions, but they're based on many hours of gameplay on both medium and very hard combat difficulties. Your mileage may vary, and that's okay. If your thoughts differ a bit, let me know in the comments. Also, each weapon does have its own timecode in the description if you'd like to skip around. Alright, let's get into it. Nidhogg. Nidhogg is the new one-handed sword for the Ashlands. If you choose not to enhance it with any of the 3 gemstone options, you can actually upgrade these naked weapons to level 3. That will get you 147 slash damage compared to the maximum 141 on any level 2 enhanced Nidhogg. But you do lose out on the magical effects, which I think make the Ashlands weapons especially fun. While slash damage is a great choice for the Ashlands, pure slash damage isn't ideal, so the naked Nidhogg goes into the D tier. Nidhogg the Bleeding. Nidhogg the Bleeding is a great choice for those up-close and personal fighters among us. The bleeding effect lets you deal more damage the more hurt you are, and swords don't have much knockback, so you're likely hitting more often than, say, a mace, and you're probably taking a bit more damage since you're closer to enemies. One-handed swords are quick weapons that can deal damage quickly, so this is a solid choice, but I don't think the bleeding variety is the optimal Nidhogg variant, but this is a solid B tier. Nidhogg the Thundering. Nidhogg the Thundering, on the other hand, is pretty delicious. The lightning enhancements are, of course, the star of the show, and many enemies in the Ashlands are weak to lightning damage. Just like all storm-enhanced weapons, Nidhogg the Thundering has a 25% chance to enact a chain lightning effect, which is absolutely devastating to nearby enemies. Paired with a one-handed sword's quick swing and lack of knockback, you have more chances to hit, which gives you more chances to enact that delicious chain lightning effect. This is an absolutely deadly weapon, there's no doubt about it. It's an easy S tier weapon choice. Nidhogg the Primal. Nidhogg the Primal can enact one of my favorite effects, the immobilized effect. Basically vine locking enemies for a short period of time. They're pretty much yours for the killing, and unless you're right in front of them, they can't hit you. As a one-handed sword, it's designed to swing quickly and hit multiple enemies in front of you, and they don't knock enemies back like a club. So more hits means more chances to enact that beautiful vine lock effect. While vine lock won't necessarily do more damage, it will allow you to maybe take a breather while you focus on other enemies, or take the vine locked enemy out as safely as possible. This is a solid A tier weapon choice. The Flametal Mace. The Flametal Mace is a good choice to set you up for success in the future, but I personally don't think it's worth making until you're ready to give it a magical effect. As a standalone weapon, it's just gonna do blunt damage, and yes, you can upgrade it to level 3 instead of the max level 2 of a magically enhanced weapon, but the 6 more blunt damage simply isn't worth it in my opinion. If you're liking your clubs, stick with the Frostner until you can enhance this bad boy and give it a nice magical effect. D tier. Bloodgeon. The Bloodgeon is such a cool looking weapon, but unfortunately for me, I don't think it's much better than the naked Flametal Mace. Sure, the Bloodstone effect is supposed to deal more damage the more health you're missing, and it doesn't disappoint in that regard. It does more damage for sure, but I just don't think this is the best use for Bloodstones. One person has mentioned to me that the additional damage does lead to more staggering potential on enemies, and if that's what you've seen, great, keep it up. But personally, I haven't noticed any additional staggering from this weapon compared to the naked version of the Flametal Mace. If you're missing some health, it will do more damage than just a regular Flametal Mace, but it's not that staggering in my opinion. But it is still pretty decent. I'll put it at C tier. The Storm Star. The Storm Star is probably most people's go-to variant of the Flametal Mace, and I can absolutely understand why. The lightning enhancement is never a bad choice, as it's effective against pretty much everything in the Ashlands. Knock an enemy away from you and give it a chance to shoot lightning into all enemies. Yeah, that's a pretty good idea. I think the Storm Star is fantastic in the Ashlands, but I personally think there is a better version of the Flametal Mace. I still give the Storm Star an A tier. The Klossen. The Klossen is, in my opinion, the absolute best variant of the Flametal Mace and one of the best new weapons for the Ashlands. Maces in Valheim are designed to help keep enemies away from you. It's all about that knockback. If an enemy is attacking you, sometimes you can just knock the enemy back and make it so that their attack doesn't hit you. This simply isn't the case with something like a sword, which practically goes through enemies. It doesn't have much knockback. Additionally, when you've hit an enemy with the Klossen, or really any nature-enhanced weapon, you have a 20% chance to enact the immobilized effect, basically stun-locking your enemy for a short period of time. Not only do you knock enemies away from you with the Klossen, but you have a chance to vine lock them and keep them away from you or your allies. In my experience, I'd say the absolute best use case for the Klossen is in very hard combat difficulty. In there, you really don't want enemies to hit you, and vine lock plus knockback is pretty fantastic. To me, the Klossen is pure S-tier material. Splitnir. In my mind, Splitnir is a bit of an odd choice from the devs. Spears are actually pretty OP early in the game, but once you progress through the biomes, it's easy to forget about spears for a while with all the shiny new toys. But spears are actually pretty good for most of the game. That is, until you get to the Ashlands. I think they're easily the worst choice for the biome. While not all enemies are resistant to pierce damage in the Ashlands, most are. That includes all charred enemies and Morgans, so you're really only best using the Splitnir against Asksven and Vultures. Not ideal. There's only one true dud on this list, and for me, that is the naked Splitnir. Easy F tier. Splitnir the Bleeding. Splitnir the Bleeding deals more damage compared to the naked Splitnir, if of course you're lacking some health, but you still only get pierce damage. As we've discussed, pierce damage is kind of lackluster in the Ashlands, so the bleeding variety of the Splitnir is only slightly better than the naked model, E tier. Splitnir the Storming. Now we're starting to have some fun. While Splitnir the Storming still deals primarily just pierce damage, we now get some lightning damage to add to the equation. Spears in general are very quick weapons, and of course they can be thrown. So with this combination, I think you've got yourself a pretty decent weapon. As always, more hits equals more chances to enact the chain lightning effect, but it also can be very handy when thrown into crowds of enemies, so you can maybe hope for some chain lightning there. I give Splitnir the Storming a B tier. Splitnir the Primal. Just like Splitnir the Storming, the Primal variant adds a magical effect that I think is actually pretty decent on a spear. Spears are quick hitters, so your chances of enacting the immobilized ability, vine locking enemies in place, are pretty high. Sure, you're still only dealing pierce damage, but vine locking is always a nice addition to the team. I'd almost always choose a different weapon other than any of the Splitnirs, but this isn't a terrible choice, just like Splitnir the Storming. But Splitnir the Primal goes into C tier. Slayer. Fans of the Crom will probably love the Slayer. If you've already been loving the Crom in the Ashlands, the Slayer at level 3 can get you 182 slash damage, which is pretty brutal. But as with pretty much all weapons, I don't think the naked option is the best. Missing out on a gemstone enhancement is kind of limiting, and level 3 is only 6 more damage than level 2 with an enhancement. So while I think it can be a fantastic choice, enhanced is pretty much always going to be my choice. Still a solid C tier weapon though. Hey, if you've made it this far into the video, thanks. I appreciate you being here. And if you're enjoying this kind of garbage, leave a like and maybe subscribe. But maybe not. I don't know, it's your life. I'm not your dad. Do whatever you want. The Brutal Slayer. I really think the Brutal Slayer is the best version of the Slayer. The Slayer in general is a brutal in-your-face weapon, so add to that the ability to do more damage if you're missing some health. Yeah, I'll take that. If you're missing 200 health, you're looking at an additional 40 damage with this weapon. Not that crazy, but it adds up nicely. So your total will be around 216 damage. If you're used to two-handed greatswords in Valheim and you can use this weapon efficiently, this can be an absolutely deadly weapon, even if it is just pure slash damage. I am a little bit on the fence between A and S tiers, but we'll give it the S tier. The Scourging Slayer. The Scourging Slayer gives you a little bit of lightning damage, but also a 25% chance to apply the chain lightning effect, devastating multiple enemies in your near vicinity. Clearly a great choice for a weapon like this, but the slow swing of a greatsword does mean you're hitting a bit less than, say, a one-handed sword, and that means less chances to enact the chain lightning effect. But it's still pretty fast and pretty effective, and you're usually cleaving through multiple enemies at a time. The Scourging Slayer is a heavy hitter, and lightning is always a great choice. Again, this one could go either way between A and S tiers, but for this one, I'm gonna go with A tier. The Primal Slayer. I think the Primal Slayer is a great choice, but I don't think it's the best iteration of the enhanced Slayers. Great swords in Valheim are heavy damage dealers, and while Veinlock is very powerful, or sometimes a game changer, I personally think the Slayer is probably best when you add some additional damage enhancement options, like the lightning or bleeding variants. While it may not be optimal in my opinion, it's still pretty great. I give it a B tier. And now for pretty much everybody's favorite, the Berserker or Berserkir Axes. The Berserkir Axes are so much fun to play with, and they do a great job at sort of hinting at what's ahead for you once you've got some gemstones. And even without any enhancements, they do a lot of damage very quickly. They're no slouch. But like pretty much every naked weapon, I think you're better off choosing the enhanced options. But the naked axes are still a solid B tier. The Bleeding Berserkir Axes. The Bleeding Berserkir Axes are honestly pretty ruthless. These weapons are designed to be an up-close and personal with your enemies kind of weapon. You're kind of expected to be spamming the attack to deal the max amount of damage, getting as many combos in as possible, not necessarily blocking a whole lot. So, if you're up close and personal, taking more damage, you're going to be dealing more damage with the Bloodstone enhanced weapon. This is absolutely a solid choice for the axes, but I do think there's a better version. So the Bleeding Axes land in the A tier for me. The Thundering Berserkir Axes. Ah, the Thundering Berserkir Axes. To me, this is the cream of the crop, the top dog.
The best of the best of the best, sir!
As we've discussed, the more you hit, the more chances you have to apply the chain lightning effect, and these axes have a lot of hits in their attack combo. 6 to be precise. So this weapon will not only deal lots of slash and lightning damage to your enemies, but if there are more nearby, they're probably already damaged due to the crazy amount of chain lightning you're seeing. I love to pair these with a nature-enhanced weapon like the Klossen. Veinlock an enemy, break out the Thundering Axes, and just decimate anything in your path, including Morgans, which are especially weak to lightning damage. The Thundering Berserkir Axes are the easiest S-tier choice in my book. The Primal Berserkir Axes. I used to think the Primal Berserkir Axes weren't that great, but I have since been convinced otherwise. While I don't think they're the best variant of the axes, that title belongs to the Lightning Axes, the Primal Axes are definitely a fantastic choice. As always, more hits on your enemy means more chances to stunlock them. And if you're vine-locking enemies already using your axes, you don't have to switch to your axes in order to continue to eviscerate them. Just keep spamming the attack button. Since Veinlock is so OP, the axes are delicious all around, and these are solidly in the A tier. Dyrnwyn. Finally, we have the mythical blade itself, Dyrnwyn. Compared to a level 2 Nidhogg, Dyrnwyn at level 2 will give you 10 more slash damage. That's 151 compared to 141. That's not nothing, but in addition to that, your sword is kind of on fire. And your first impression may be, wait, this is the Ashlands, right? Shouldn't everything be kind of resistant to fire? Didn't I just see this warrior walk through the lava? Yeah, maybe, but also no. In my experience, enemies in the Ashlands aren't resistant to fire, or at least fire damage does seem effective to me, and damage over time is kind of nice. Compare that to the poison damage you get on the nature-enhanced weapons, which enemies in the Ashlands are pretty much all resistant to, at least the Charred. So fire does seem like an effective option. While I have found Dyrnwyn to be quite effective in the Ashlands, I'd personally rather give up the 10 fire damage and the 10 additional slash damage for the potential for chain lightning from Nidhogg the Thundering, or the Veinlock from Nidhogg the Primal. But that's just me. I'm betting Dyrnwyn is mostly designed to set people up for the deep north. I'm guessing that weapon is gonna come in handy up there. But I'd still say Dyrnwyn is a solid A tier weapon. So, what do you think? Did I get anything horribly wrong? What would your rankings look like? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you feel like it. I am working on a similar video where I rank all of the new range and magic weapons from the Ashlands, so look out for that in the coming weeks. Alright, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.
That's not what I wanted! Oh, son of a... Ah! No! Lovely! Oh boy. Great! No! I just... Look at all that health I just lost. I was full health.